lucky to have our next keynote, Gary Boyle, all the way, as you can see from the T-shirt, from Unity. Now, he's going to be talking about the intersection of industries. And while it might seem very easy, we're taking a road that goes from architecture to film to the gaming industry. So Gary is going to walk us through that wonderful journey and the lessons he's learned.
Cheers.
It's all yours.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you everyone for having me, especially thank you to Gaming Malta and Ivan for being very generous in having me here today. I'm Gary. I work with Unity as a senior partner engineer. Our team is a multidisciplinary team where we come from a variety of different backgrounds, and we work with customers, answering technical questions, engaging with them, doing technical demos, and it's all about trying to provide the right solutions for the customer to succeed in their project. And this variety of backgrounds from our team is really one of the key advantages of how we're able to work together. And so, I'd just like to spend 10 or so minutes talking about my particular background, some of the rules and things and that I've learned along the way, how different industries can influence each other. And hopefully it's of interest. So back in 2003, I studied architecture. Actually graduated from the University of Edinburgh with a degree in architectural design, and then went on to work helping to design buildings like the Chimpanzee House at Edinburgh Zoo. Eventually went over to Hong Kong to work on these multi-billion-dollar mega casinos in Macau. And the course itself was really hardcore, lots of 100-hour plus weeks, lots of crunch. And it's all about building your portfolio and trying to understand how to present ideas on paper or video. Also a lot of problem solving and critical thinking. And these are real key components that are really transferable to basically all our creative industries. One of the things we were taught was there's a lot of soft and hard rules in architecture and the sort of built environment. There's things like if we look at sort of early Roman and Greek orders of columns here, you can see that they sort of followed a design structure where you started with very simple types like the Greek Doric, and then they moved up into more complex kinds like the Greek Ionic, the Greek Corinthian, and they're sort of adding all these flourishes and embellishments over time. And these were originally used for Greek and Roman temples and very important buildings. And they had very sort of strict rules about the type of flourishes and the details and how they were associated with each other. And in the neoclassical period, so this is sort of around the 18th century, architects started looking into this information and using it to embellish other types of buildings. And they used the motifs that were there. So the Doric was known for its simplicity and strength. So these are sort of government buildings. Then you had the Ionic, which is all elegant, about balance, and you would associate that with art galleries and museums. And then the Corinthian, which was all this elaborate, and it was a show of wealth, so you would see financial institutions and banks. And then that translates over to gaming, like a series like Assassin's Creed, where it have an absolutely impeccable standard of architectural research that's gone into these games. They actually employed architectural consultants to educate them on how to use these sort of details in their games. And you can see the Greek Parthenon, the Pantheon in Rome, and these details are important for not only embedding the games in a period and a region, but also they can be important play game mechanics as well, where you're actually, Assassin's Creed, you're climbing on all these features and hiding behind them. And that sort of taking from one industry and really bringing it over and using it as reference is really, really quite important. If you don't follow these rules, if you skew the relationships of these different shapes and how they behave and interact with each other, there's actually a name for that. It's called the postmodern period. And this was a dark, dark period in architectural history where the architects knew what these shapes were and how they were supposed to relate to each other, but they pushed them beyond the sort of realms of taste, I would say. And I really end up looking kitsch and take you out of the immersion. So here's a sort of basic history of Western architecture with all the periods that sort of followed on from each other. And I look at a diagram like this, and I think the developers behind Assassin's Creed kind of just take a dart and throw it at a picture like this and select a period for placing their next game in, because you can see that immediately it allows you to embed your game or your experience in a particular time or period, and just to give that sort of authenticity to the experience. On the counter side, there are areas that basically have no rules. This is a region that I'm particularly fascinated with. This is known as Kowloon Walled City, and it was an area in Hong Kong that was sort of legally undefined. So it wasn't owned by the Chinese government, it wasn't owned by the British government, and there was basically no rules or government that was taking over that period. And so it emerged very organically, and the buildings were sort of defined by the people that lived there. There was no building regulations, for example. And what grew up was very sort of utilitarian in nature, but it still had its own aesthetic, and it sort of broke all these rules about how you would expect to normally inhabit shared spaces. And then you can really easily go and see games like Cyberpunk and see how they've pulled from this reference and used that to create the spaces and this sort of dystopian future for their own experiences as well. So obviously the built environment is just this great breeding ground for reference and for building your games. There are ways to break the rules as well. So this is more of a sort of passive experience where somebody has obviously tried to design this path. They've gone down, sat at a desk, they've drawn it out, they've got approval for it, which is no mean feat. They've acquired funds, they've got a building company, dug up the ground, laid the concrete, and then users of it then go along and shave 15 seconds off their daily commute by walking over the grass. And this is what's known as a desire path. And it's really an example of the kind of features that you expect to see in the actual built environment. And really, like the masters, in my opinion, of this are Rockstar. There's Red Dead Redemption 2. A little fly here. Where, you know, if you don't have these kind of features in your games and you're not sort of observing them and really looking at these points of reference, then it can feel a little bit dead and a little bit uninhabited by the occupants. So but really just go out and look at the built environment around you and try and take reference from it and pull from it. And this isn't something that's only applicable to AAA photorealistic games either. This is a game that I'm following with great curiosity. It's called Chef RPG, and it's done by a YouTuber called Pixel Architect, who was a trained architect and then transitioned over to the games development. And what I see is like a clear visual evolving from the sort of more simpler Stardew Valley 2D sprite-based thing, where he's building these really rich environments that look lived in, they look like there's interest there, there's places that you want to visit, and it has sort of a visual identity and an aesthetic that just, to me, is very rich. So, 2008, I was working in architecture, building these massive casinos, and the global recession hit, and nobody wanted to build anything anymore. And I took the opportunity to transition over to the visual effects industry. So I did a very intensive one-year course, more 100-hour plus work weeks, building up a new portfolio, and then got a job in London, working at Double Negative, where I felt like I worked on about 100 different superhero movies. And eventually took an opportunity to move over to New Zealand to work for Weta, working on Hobbit, Planet of the Apes, and eventually Avatar 2, where I did a bunch of the water simulation work for that. And it was a great experience. And my sort of time in the film industry taught me that they had these similar rules, hard and soft, that you can use and you can, that really sort of define cinema and cinematography. So you have, cinematography, you have composition, you have lighting. And the rules in the architectural world and other rules that I've been sort of talking about, they're soft rules. Like you can and you should break them. Once you understand them, you should break them to try and create different emotions. So if you find that playing with the relationships of shapes and buildings in a horror game might evoke a sort of creepy or scary environment. But there is one sort of exception to this rule, and that is the 180-degree rule. This is a rule that states if you have two characters talking to each other, you should imagine a line between them. This is called the line of action. And when you have your camera, the camera should only ever be in the 180-degree period of these two actors or characters. If you break that, if you flip over to the other side, it is incredibly easy for your viewer or your player to really lose any sort of visual embodiment of the scene, and they can get very, very visually confused very, very quickly. And it's very jarring as well. And there are directors out there who can and do break this rule, but those are people like Stanley Kubrick, like real masters of the art. And so just avoid it if you can. You see it all the time in game cinematics and fly-through scenes where the camera just does this either 180-degree flip or it's bouncing around from side to side, and it's disorientating. Composition is another thing that comes from cinematography, which can directly apply into the games industry, where you have these rules that have been built up over time, and it's very difficult to apply these to games development because your character is generally moving around, your perspective is changing, but they are, it's a great way to focus your eye into a particular subject or area of your scene. And you know, there's great talks, like in 2017, Nintendo did a talk about how they used tactics like this when they were developing Breath of the Wild, and you can almost pick them up and apply them, like the first-person shooter example down in the bottom left-hand corner. Lighting, as technology advances, things like global illumination allow us to really use technologies that previously were only available in offline rendering modes and apply them to the real-time industry. And once you have the technology there, you can go and steal from these other industries and take all the techniques that they've defined over 50, 60 years and directly apply them. And every type of lighting scenario evokes, again, different emotions and different experiences for your player. So go pull from those resources. Color, again, is another great example where you can choose your favorite film, a scene that evokes some emotion from you, open it up in Photoshop and just pull some of the values from there. And that allows you to instantly create an aesthetic or a feeling for your scene or your project and apply it. The two artworks on the bottom left-hand side there, they're what called movie spectrums. And that's, somebody's gone in and taken an average color value of every one of the frames for the entire movie and then compressed them into these vertical slices. And I think they're beautiful, but you can instantly tell that the one on top there is Disney's Aladdin, and the one below it is The Matrix. Like, they just have that instant communication of a feeling and an environment. And again, this isn't just photorealistic, ray-traced, 4090 GI projects that can use these kind of techniques. They're really beautiful and aesthetic games, in my opinion. All have the sort of ideas of silhouette and color and contrast, and they're using the similar techniques, and you can fake these techniques as well in gaming. You don't have to rely on things like global illumination, but they're key components to trying to give a visual identity. A lot of my time was spent in rigid body simulation and water simulation, and these are now features that can be instantly applied and bring new interesting gameplay mechanics that maybe haven't been experienced before. Abyss in the top left-hand corner there is a game that's made with Unity Physics, and not only being beautiful, is really, really fun to play, and is a different experience than a lot of games that have been out recently. Teardown is another one where you've got a voxel-based environment where you can destroy literally everything in this sort of heist game. Brilliant. And then Wave Race 64 and Sea of Thieves, and they're both using sort of similar technologies with wave displacement that came around like 20 years ago. And as computers are getting faster, we now have the opportunity to do real-time fluid simulation in engines and runtime. I'm really kind of interested to see where that leads us in terms of making new and interesting gaming experiences. Then 2020, another global crisis happened. COVID hit, and I took the opportunity to move my family back to Edinburgh and took a job at Rockstar as a senior technical artist. Again, that was sort of a mixture of technical and art, and obviously I was working on a project which is as yet unannounced and may or may not feature a lot of automobiles. But the Rockstar were and are, in my opinion, the kings of using these kind of rules and references from other industries to really influence their games. For example, they would send entire teams of people out to the other side of the world to photograph sidewalks, to use that sort of direct reference in their games. And I think it really comes across. How does this apply to you in Malta? Well, Malta is this incredible cultural mixing pot with a ton of great industries here. And these are all great industries that, you have aviation, maritime, archaeology, tourism, the film industry. It seems like Brad Pitt makes a film over here every couple of years. And these are all industries that use computer graphics in different ways. So you can obviously have that sort of relationship with those industries, but you can also form relationships with them and use those transfer of knowledge and transfer of skills to influence your experiences that you're developing, and really trying to embed this feeling of authenticity into the games. You know, if you worked as a waiter while you were growing up, then maybe that influences an Overcooked variation, or you know, your journey is your sort of is very valid. Your experience and contributes to your voice as a developer, and I'd just say try and pull from those other experiences. So I'm finished. Thank you for listening to me. Please hit me up outside if you would like to talk further. And just in closing, please, please, please never break the 180-degree rule, please. It makes it really bad. Thank you.